Today we are reading Rejoice Because You're Trying Your Best. Apartment 304 is sad today, Vex said, about the stream of violin pouring across the small wooded lawn path that separated the Amon Towers 200 building from the Amon Towers 300 building. If Pike knew anything about classical music, she would try and say it was like such and such composer, but she didn't, so all she could say was that it sounded tumultuous and sorrowful. And it had been going on for around half an hour now. At around the 10-minute mark, Vex and Vax came down from their apartment for a better listen. For whatever reason, Pike and Grog's balcony in 202 was in a direct path of 304's music. She and the twins opened a few early afternoon beers while they talked and listened. After a week of long 12-hour shifts in the back of the ambulance, Pike didn't want to go anywhere or do anything. There was usually something relaxing about 304's practice sessions, but today they were playing up a storm of melancholy. It wasn't making her mood worse, but it wasn't exactly distracting her either. Vax, sitting on the floor of the balcony with Trinket's head in his lap, said, "He's a musician. I don't think his choices necessarily reflect his emotional state all the time." That made sense, but Pike wasn't so sure. She heard 304 play a lot more than the other people in the complex. Or at least, it seemed like she never stopped hearing 304. There was always music quietly streaming from 304, not always stuff they were performing. 304's apartment only looked active in the afternoons and completely shut down in the mornings. She suspected they had late shift work and night work, like her. It made a feasible kind of sense that a paramedic and a musician might run the same hours. 304's music was hard to describe. Maybe she wasn't familiar enough with hearing music being played live, but there was always a pop and a presence to it that made it feel visceral. "We're not sure 304 is a he," Vex said. "Sean told me he saw a guy going in there several times." In a dramatic, mocking voice, she said, "And Sean knows everything about everyone." "More than you, asshole." Vax looked to Pike, even though Pike didn't doubt Gilmore's ability to find out the lowdown on 304, and added, "He's part of the Tenants Association, and he's very sociable." Pike nodded happily. "He's a very nice guy, and very handsome." Vex laughed. Vax rolled his eyes, but smiled and continued to pet Trinket's massive head. "Besides," Vex said, motioning to the 300 building with her beer bottle, "can't you tell real feeling when you hear it? This is truly, earnestly, some sad shit. I can tell. I'm very perceptive." The new resident of 304 had moved in 4 months ago to the immediate notice of everyone, considering the sudden appearance of regular music recitals. There was always a variety of styles, volumes, and even instruments. Piano and violin were the loudest and most regular. Pike figured no one complained to the landlord about it, except maybe once. One night, pretty late, there had been a trombone or a trumpet playing possibly When the Saints Come Marching In, and it had never made a reappearance. Everything else, though, was very nice to listen to, even if Pike didn't know music enough to find out what all 304 played. "Maybe they're playing a request," Vax said with a shrug. "Maybe the word has gotten around, and they're taking requests from the whole complex. You are a trendsetter, after all." Vex nodded judiciously. "That's true, I am." A few weeks ago, Vex and Grog decided they were going to slip a request under 304's door after Grog said he was tired of hearing what he called elevator music all day. A half an hour later, 304 responded with a violin rendition of Eye of the Tiger. Pike agreed with Vex, though. 304 sounded sad today. She had no idea who 304 was, or what they might be like, but she really felt sure about how the sound carried through her balcony. The violin was crying its notes. The peace of the shady walkway between their buildings only enhanced the contrast of the stormy music. She kept waiting for something to break into the view of her balcony. An abrupt stop to the music. Someone running out of 304 to cry or smoke. A sudden change in the weather to match the tone. "I'm just saying," Vax added. "Musicians have to music. This is probably not the first time in 3-4 months they've been here that 304 has felt sad." Maybe that was true. Maybe Pike was just tired after a hard week. She saw lots of people bleed that week. Someone had died in the van on Tuesday. Normally, if she and her partner Cash couldn't keep the atmosphere superficial, they at least tried to keep things fast-paced. But it was rare a patient actually died on the way to the hospital, and neither of them recovered from the blow. Every drive after that felt long and tense. Maybe it was Pike that was sad. 304's practice time eventually came to an end, but all the pieces he played were a strong heartache that felt strange in this warm summer afternoon. Grog came back from the gym, but couldn't stay long before he had to go to work. Grog had a similar nighttime schedule to Pike. He was a bouncer on the weekends, and rented security for a transport service during the week. Since Grog was never around on Saturday nights, she usually tried to find company elsewhere, usually Vex and Vax. However, Vex left for a date, a pretty normal Saturday night event, but then her last remaining buddy, Vax, left to spend time with Gilmore. She thought about calling Cash, but their relationship was more, I got your back, buddy, and less, tell me everything, hun. Cash probably wouldn't even allow the buddy part, since when he said that, he usually said it very sarcastically. Instead, she sat down on the couch and watched a few hours of Cupcake Wars on Netflix, but it failed to alleviate the funk she was feeling. Pike didn't like being alone. She wasn't afraid of it, but alone time led to introspection and self-doubt. It made her wonder if she'd been too slow or not thinking clearly on Tuesday, and maybe if she'd been better, the person would still be alive. Well, without anyone to distract her, she tried to focus on the cupcakes. She did not stop drinking, however, which is definitely what led to her probably making a huge mistake. Pike wrote out a note to 304. It flowed very easily in the moment. It felt very cute and witty and friendly while she was writing it. It was only after she walked over to the 300 building and slipped it into the mail slot for apartment 304 that she realized that it was probably a super crazy thing to do, and was probably more drunk sounding than she'd previously thought. As soon as the paper fell out of sight, she ran her fingertips along the narrow slot to see if she could catch any edge and pull it back out. For a second, she thought about calling the landlord and pretending she needed 304's mailbox open because she accidentally dropped something in it. But after a few seconds of looking around the 300 building lobby for a stray paperclip she could fish it back out with, one of the 300 tenants returned and looked at her strangely. She went back home to 202 and ate an entire bag of chips while she tried to watch Ghostbusters. Sunday morning, she briefly considered writing another note to apologize for the one she'd left the night before. She also imagined that could probably result in further notes being left, each apologizing or trying to amend the last, and that would be truly bad, so she didn't. Pike thought about asking Vex's advice, but Vex tended to give really good advice that forced Pike to do things she was trying to procrastinate doing, so she just waited. Pike checked the mailbox once and figured it would be weird to do it twice on a Sunday. When music wafted across the lawn between the 200 building and the 300 building later that afternoon, it wasn't the intensely morose violin of Saturday, but it didn't seem like some kind of message to her either. It was piano. It started with a drifting and delicate classical piece that Pike never could have named in a million years. Then something like very old blues, the easiest to hear. And 304's recital time ended with something incomprehensible in jazz. Hard to make out well across the distance of 2 rooms in 2 different buildings. By Tuesday, Pike was beginning to relax. 304 had to have read the note by then, but hadn't responded. Music, peaceful and energetic, sad and happy, drifted from 304's apartment like nothing had happened. So at least she had a clear game plan. Essentially, find out for sure what 304 looked like, and then avoid them as much as humanly possible so they'd never find out it was her. Wednesday, before she left for her shift, she checked the mailbox, and inside was a folded piece of paper with "To Thankful 202" scrawled on it. When she brought everything back inside, she set it down on her nightstand hesitantly without reading, and then left for work. When she came back in the middle of the night, or morning, or whatever you call after 3 a.m., the note seemed to draw her attention from her trek around her room as she undressed, put her things away, and put on her pajamas. She decided to just go to bed and read it in the morning. It was too late for anything but sleep. 20 minutes after that, she turned the light back on and read the fucking note. To Thankful 202. It took me a while to figure out what to say to you. That's unusual for me. Thank you for your concern. Thank you even more for listening. I didn't know my music reached the other building, so I'm feeling a little conflicted. I'm louder than I thought, but also you like it, so I can't be all bad. I'm sure I'm a pain in the ass to plenty of people, but I'll keep going until the man shuts me down. Not everyone responds to music like you. What you said about knowing someone else is alive may be one of the best things anyone has ever said about hearing my music. If you're thankful for that, I'm grateful. To answer your questions, playing sad music when I'm sad can go either way. I'd be pretty insufferably conceited if I only listened to my own music, and I'm pretty bad already. Writing my own music definitely feels like slow, painful work. The result can be fun. Reciting other people's music can be entertaining. It can be work. It can be transcendental. I know you weren't asking, but it's never too late to add music to your life if you want to learn. I know lots of people who give freelance lessons. Just keep that in mind. I'll have a lot better time in my apartment knowing at least a few people don't want me evicted. Thank you for your questions as well. Maybe we'll talk face to face one day. 304 signed off with just a few scribbled music notes. No name, no offer to have a neighbor-to-neighbor friendship. The handwriting was a little messy. It didn't look obviously male or obviously female, which Pike always thought was a weird thing that existed, but she still sorted handwriting like that too. So there were no new clues about them. She hadn't thought what to expect back. Maybe just a simple thanks and nothing else. Maybe a request to never write them again. And scanning through 304's words, it was hard to remember exactly what she wrote. She hadn't been totally wasted, but she had been slow drinking for a few hours. Had it been very embarrassing? Maybe not too much if 304 had responded so nicely. Pike did remember the part about how the music reminded her someone else was alive at the same time. It was particular to the spontaneous live playing 304 did. One, because she'd never had that in a living arrangement, where just going around in her private life, beautiful music would just appear. And two, because 304 was someone she didn't know, just happening into her life accidentally. Having an uncontrolled, unsolicited connection to something beautiful run in and out of the mundane parts of her life was invigorating and exciting. It reminded her in a small way of the best parts of her job, life entering the world, seeing relief on people's faces. It was like breathing with someone at the same time. The whole feeling was hard to articulate, and words were not Pike's strong suit. She was just happy she hadn't actually made an ass out of herself. She went to sleep and went on with her life, keeping an ear out for whatever spare melody she could make out from across the lawn. Except for a few days later when she pulled out a notebook next to her during breakfast and started writing. Hi again, 304.